Last spring, I found myself in one of those strange periods where life seemed to be standing still. I'd finished college a semester ahead of schedule. My new job didn't begin until early summer. And for the first time in years, I had absolutely nothing demanding my attention. At first, it felt like freedom. After a couple of weeks, though, it started feeling more like I was wasting my life. Most of my friends were still buried under exams while I spent my days scrolling through my phone, cleaning things that weren't dirty, and inventing reasons to leave the house. That's when my aunt called. She and my uncle owned a vacation home near the coast in a quiet beach community called Sandpoint Cove. They hadn't visited since the previous fall because my uncle had undergone knee surgery, and they wanted someone to check on the property after several spring storms had rolled through. It sounded easy enough. Drive down, make sure the roof hadn't leaked, run the faucets, check the breaker panel, lock everything up, come home. The drive took just under 3 hours. I left around 4 in the afternoon, figuring I'd have plenty of daylight. The neighborhood looked exactly as I remembered. Tall dune grass swayed beside narrow roads lined with expensive homes that sat empty most of the year. It was one of those places that came alive during the summer, but felt almost abandoned before tourist season. Their house sat at the end of a winding lane surrounded by weathered cedar fencing and sea oats. I'd spent countless summers there growing up. There were memories tucked into every corner of that. Property family cookouts, card games that lasted until midnight, cousins racing through the hallways, and my grandfather insisting every sunset was better than the last. Without everyone there, the place felt wrong. Almost like walking through a movie set after filming had wrapped. I unlocked the front door and immediately noticed how loud silence could be. The old grandfather clock in the foyer ticked steadily. The refrigerator hummed somewhere in the kitchen. Every other sound came from me. I spent the next hour checking everything on the list. The plumbing worked. No burst pipes. No broken windows. Power was fine. Outside, I walked the perimeter of the property, checking the storage shed and the deck overlooking the dunes. A few tree branches had fallen during recent storms, but nothing major. By the time I finished, the sun was beginning to disappear behind a blanket of gray clouds. Driving unfamiliar coastal roads after dark wasn't exactly appealing. I called my aunt. "Just stay the night," she said. "You've got the whole place to yourself." I didn't need much convincing. After heating up a frozen pizza I'd found in the freezer, I watched a movie in the living room before eventually heading upstairs. Normally, whenever the entire family visited, I slept in a cramped guest room tucked into the top floor. That night, however, there wasn't anyone to tell me where I could or couldn't sleep. I claimed the largest bedroom without hesitation. It overlooked the dunes through enormous windows, had its own bathroom, and featured the softest mattress I'd ever laid on. For the first time all evening, I actually relaxed. The wind outside picked up after midnight. I could hear it pushing against the siding in slow waves, occasionally rattling one of the loose shutters. It became background noise before long. I must have fallen asleep within minutes. I don't know what time it was when I woke up. Everything was dark except for pale moonlight filtering through the curtains. At first, I couldn't understand why I was awake. Then I heard it, a faint scrape. It sounded distant, almost gentle, like someone slowly dragging something across hardwood flooring. I held my breath. Silence. I convinced myself it had probably been part of a dream. Just as I closed my eyes again, tap, a single sharp knock. Not at the bedroom door, inside the room. I sat upright. Every hair on my arm stood up. The sound had come from somewhere near the walk-in closet. I stared toward the darkness. Nothing moved. The closet door remained closed. I laughed quietly to myself. Old houses made noises. Wood expanded. Pipes shifted. The wind could make almost anything creak. That had to be it. I reached for my phone to check the time. The moment the screen lit my face, something answered. 3 soft taps echoed from inside the closet. Not random, not settling wood. 3 perfectly spaced knocks. Tap, tap, tap. I froze. My heart pounded so hard I could actually hear it. Every logical explanation disappeared. There was someone else in the house. I slid as quietly as I could toward the edge of the bed. careful not to make the mattress squeak. The bedroom suddenly felt impossibly large. Every shadow seemed darker. Every second stretched longer than the last. Then came another sound, a slow metallic click. The closet doorknob. It turned. Only slightly, just enough for me to hear the latch release. The door eased open by a few inches. I couldn't see inside, only darkness, complete darkness. I stayed perfectly still, praying whoever or whatever was there hadn't noticed I was awake. Several agonizing seconds passed. Nothing emerged. Then I heard breathing. Not mine. Someone else's. Slow, steady, close enough that it echoed faintly inside the room. I wanted to grab my phone. I wanted to run. Instead, I remained frozen beneath the blanket, staring toward that narrow opening. The breathing stopped. For one hopeful moment, I wondered if whoever had been there had walked away. Then a silhouette stepped silently out of the closet. A man, tall, broad shoulders, his face hidden completely in shadow. He stood motionless at the foot of my bed, watching me. He didn't say a word. He didn't move closer. He simply stood there. Every instinct screamed at me not to react. After what felt like forever, he slowly turned toward the bedroom door. Without making a sound, he disappeared into the hallway. Only then did I dare breathe again. I didn't move until I heard the floorboards creak outside the bedroom. One step, then another. The sound drifted farther down the hallway before stopping completely. I waited. 30 seconds, a minute, maybe 2. It felt impossible to judge time with adrenaline pumping through my body. Finally, I reached for my phone as carefully as I could. My hands were shaking so badly I nearly dropped it. I didn't dare call anyone out loud, so I dialed emergency services and whispered into the receiver. "I think someone's inside the house." The dispatcher immediately began asking questions. I answered as quietly as I could, explaining where I was and that I had just watched an unknown man walk out of my bedroom. She told me officers were already on their way and instructed me to stay hidden if it was safe to do so. Before ending the call, she said something that stuck with me. "If you hear him come back, don't confront him." I quietly locked the bedroom door. Then I dragged the small dresser in front of it. It wouldn't stop anyone determined to get in, but it made me feel slightly less exposed. For several minutes, everything was silent. Then rain, a heavy thud echoed from somewhere upstairs. I frowned. The bedroom I was in was on the second floor. Above me was only the attic. Another bang followed, this one louder. It sounded as though someone had dropped something heavy across wooden boards. I stared toward the ceiling. The dispatcher had remained on the line, listening with me. "Can you identify where that noise is coming from?" she whispered. "The attic," I answered. The line went quiet again. A few moments later, faint blue and red lights flashed through the bedroom curtains. Relief washed over me. The officers had arrived. I hurried downstairs and unlocked the front door as they approached. Within seconds, 4 officers entered the house. 2 stayed with me while the others began searching room by room. I expected them to find the man almost immediately. Instead, nothing. They searched every bedroom, every bathroom, every closet, the attic, the basement utility room, even the garage. No one. One officer looked at me sympathetically. "Are you sure you weren't dreaming?" "I was awake," I insisted. I watched him leave the room. The officer nodded but didn't seem convinced. There aren't many places someone could hide. I couldn't explain it. I knew what I'd seen. One of the younger officers asked if they could inspect outside before leaving. We stepped onto the rear deck overlooking the dunes. The wind had become stronger, whipping sand across the boardwalk leading toward the beach. A flashlight beam swept across the backyard, then stopped. "Hold on." Everyone turned. The officer slowly aimed the light higher. At first, I couldn't tell what he was looking at. Then I saw movement. Someone was lying flat against the far side of the roof. The man wasn't trying to escape. He wasn't waving. He was simply watching us. The officer shouted several commands. The stranger didn't respond. Another officer climbed through a second-floor window that opened onto a maintenance ledge while others surrounded the house below. Only after several tense minutes did the man finally allow himself to be taken into custody. He never resisted. He never spoke. As they led him across the yard, I got my first clear look at him. He looked exhausted. His beard had grown wild. His clothes were filthy and torn. His eyes never settled on any one thing. Instead, they wandered across the house as though he were searching for someone else. The officers questioned him for nearly half an hour. He refused to answer even the simplest questions. No name, no explanation, nothing. Eventually, one officer approached me. "We're trying to figure out how long he's been here." "What do you mean?" "He wasn't carrying any personal belongings." I looked back toward the house. "What does that have to do with anything?" The officer hesitated. "When we searched the attic." He paused. "No one necessary to return." We found evidence that someone had been living up there. A chill ran through me. They showed me photographs before allowing me back inside. Hidden behind stacks of insulation was a small space no larger than a walk-in closet. Inside were empty food cans, several bottles of water, old blankets, flashlights, even a portable radio. Whoever had been staying there had clearly been living inside the house for quite some time. The realization made my stomach turn. He hadn't broken in that night. He'd already been there before I ever arrived. The next morning, my aunt and uncle drove down as soon as I called them. Neither could believe what had happened. My uncle immediately hired contractors to inspect every inch of the property. During their inspection, they discovered something nobody had known about. A narrow maintenance hatch connected the attic to an empty space running above several bedroom closets. It had been sealed decades earlier during renovations, but part of the old framework had collapsed. Someone small enough could move between the attic and the closets without ever being seen, including the closet in the room where I'd slept. That discovery explained almost everything. Almost. It didn't explain why he had stood beside my bed without harming me. It didn't explain why he simply watched, or why he climbed onto the roof instead of trying to run. Months later, one of the detectives handling the case called me with an update. The man had finally been identified. He had been reported missing several years earlier after struggling with severe mental health issues. According to investigators, he'd wandered through several coastal towns before somehow finding shelter inside abandoned vacation properties. No one knew how many homes he'd occupied over the years. He never explained why he chose them. He never explained why he hid instead of leaving. Even after his identity was confirmed, he refused to speak during interviews. The case eventually faded from the news. Life returned to normal. My aunt and uncle installed security cameras, reinforced every attic entrance, and added motion sensors throughout the property. The house is still in the family. They've invited me back several times. I haven't accepted. Some memories become attached to places forever. Whenever I close my eyes, I don't remember the flashing police lights or the officers leading that man away. I remember waking in complete darkness. I remember 3 soft knocks from inside the closet. And I remember opening my eyes just enough to see a stranger standing silently at the foot of my bed, watching me while the rest of the house slept. To this day, that's the image that still wakes me up in the middle of the night.